Hello again, everybody. This is Dan Clouser, and welcome back to the Journey of My Mother's Son podcast. Today I'm joined with Tracy Tanguay, who I will let her kind of dig into her bio because she's got all kinds of stuff on her plate. But we initially connected through Instagram. She goes by MobilityChick there, and she works with a lot of big league clubs, just doing flexibility, plyometrics, mobility, all that fun stuff that you know men usually don't think is that important. Um, but she did a post about youth sports a while ago, and I immediately was like, this really resonated. Wanted to have her on the show, and I think we're just going to have a lot of fun here. But before we get started, Tracy, introduce yourself in your own words. Who is Tracy today?
Dan, first, thank you for having me. It's exciting to be able to connect with like-minded folks. And I actually wish you did the intro of my bio because it is kind of a roundabout bio, and I never really know what to start and what to add. So I'll just throw it in. If there's something that you feel like I should have said, if you remember, feel free to throw it out.
Absolutely.
So, as Dan said, I go by Mobility Chick on all social platforms, and I work with players and teams doing movement optimization, helping players and coaches learn how to be more intentional about their movements, specifically in the transitions. So I have this saying, no energy leaks through transitional movements. And I'll kind of like go off onto this for a second and then come back to my bio. So what that means is really honing in on the transitional space between positions. So people are usually fairly decent at getting their body to a particular position in a drill. Let's just say a lunge. Most people know what a lunge is. Most people, you can kind of adjust your body of, well, okay, this is what the lunge is supposed to look like. But then when they go from a lunge to the next part of a movement pattern, they might look great in an airplane mode where you're kind of on one leg and your body's out and your leg is parallel with the ground. But the movement between the lunge and that airplane, most people usually suck at it. And that's the part that I really hone in on, because when you can create that intentional awareness within your body through the movements from between position A and position B, it really kind of like buttons up the movement where there's less energy leaks, there's less room for weakness along the way. And that translates really, really well to on-field performance and keeping players healthy. So the I don't know, like 4 years ago, I put together, it was right after COVID, during COVID. I don't honestly, I lose track of time. I put
COVID's a
together,
fog for everyone, so
it
that's
is like, I don't
okay.
even know what year it is. Like, was it 2 years ago? Was it 4 years ago? So I've been in the fitness industry, wellness, health, training for 25 years, right? I'm 27 though, so I started at a really young age. And it's just been something that's always been interesting to me. And then I was a baseball wife for a while, and just really enjoyed watching players move. So I did yoga with the Royals back in the day and did yoga with a bunch of different teams. And that was kind of before yoga was cool. It was like 10, 15 years ago where it was like, ooh, yoga is this like woo-woo thing. I actually have, I think, Trey Hillman on the news saying, oh, there's a girl out there doing yoga with the players. And I don't know if it's this woo-woo stuff. And I thought, well, how about we don't go into the woo-woo? It's actually helping your players stay healthy. But anyway, so that evolved over the years. I have 4 kids now. And during COVID, I put together a 12-week mobility series. And what it is a progressional series with 3 classes per week, where each class progresses and builds within the class, but then each week builds and then week to week builds. And we're really working on all that transitional stuff that I was just talking about. So I've worked with players and coaches now from 27 of the 30 MLB teams. I've worked with now I've some college I was trying to think of the names of the colleges, and I don't normally drop different teams, but the D2 national championships, Angelo State University did my series before they won the national champs, and then they won, which is awesome. They're back for year 2. So some universities, and because I have 4 kids who play little league, I started watching the warm-ups and what players are doing or the coaches are doing. And all of my kids' coaches are phenomenal. I want to add that. So anything I say has nothing to do with any of my, personal connections. But what I just kept seeing are these static warm-ups and this old school stuff that I did when I played soccer, 35 plus years ago. And I thought, wow, this is really outdated. And seeing the injuries and how people are getting into sport specialization at an early age, it just kind of compounded. And I started having parents reaching out and youth coaches and training facilities. So now I'm mostly in pro, but I also am working with colleges, other elite players, and now down into the youth. And I'm actually creating a youth mobility series as we speak. It's still in the works. It takes forever. It's so lengthy and time consuming, but very, very well worth it. Just to help our youth stay healthy and learn how to move a little bit better so they can perform better and less injuries. So kind of all over the place. I have a degree from Northwestern in neuroscience and cognitive science. I do energy healing. I do Pilates, a whole bunch of other, like if you want to look at my credentials, you go to my website, mobilitychick.com. And so my bio is kind of all over the place, but what I now do is, I would say, intuitive, holistic movement optimization for athletes, and from youth to pro, pro to youth, and everything in between.
I love it.
I
I
feel like
love it.
I should take a bow after that.
You should. That's impressive for sure. But so yeah, well, let's start with you know, at the bottom here talking about youth sports, because again, that's kind of what it was a story or a reel or something you'd posted and it just resonated with me. And I know one of the things that you talk about a lot is, there is this concept, and again, myself coming from that industry, and it's weird to call youth sports an industry, but it has certainly turned into that nowadays, which, you know, I guess is both good and bad in a way. But there's just such a focus on, sports specialization at a young age, which, I'm a baseball guy, but I always encouraged, our kids playing other sports. And you can go back to, guys like Nomar Garcia Parra talking about how much him playing soccer throughout high school helped him with his footwork as a shortstop and stuff like that. But yet all of a sudden now we think that we should have an 8-year-old kid only playing baseball year round. So I know you got a lot of thoughts on this, so I'm just going to throw it over to you.
Like, unleash her. I what I want to add is I'm not someone who ever wants to say anything that offends anybody, because I have no judgment on what anybody else does with their own family and their own kids, and what is right for my family and what I think is, overall good for everybody doesn't mean it's right for yours. So I'm speaking what I prefer best for my kids and what I share with my kids' friends, and I just happen to have a platform that I share with everybody. So these are my thoughts. Take them with a grain of salt. So it's interesting. I was actually talking with a dad of a 14-year-old pitcher last night, and his son was having some back issues. And then I think he hurt, I don't know if it was his elbow or his shoulder a year or so ago. And we started talking about travel sports and how intense it is and how, it's basically year round. And his son is going to be going into high school, and he was thinking about not playing high school basketball, freshman basketball, basically to prepare for his spring baseball season. And it was just really interesting to hear. And this kid actually, him and his parents do a really good job of making sure that the kid's not, he wasn't one of the kids that have been playing since they were 7 or 8 years old year round. But it was just interesting to think, okay, that there is data to support that sport specialization before the age of 13 turns into an increase of injuries, where these kids might not have these career-threatening injuries or a blowout of something, but they're in PT because something is out of whack and something has been hurting and their elbow and they've got to take time off. And this dad said the orthopedic doctor that they were talking to, or maybe there was some either a doctor or coach or something, that said they're seeing so many more injuries, even this local area or the local space, where so many kids are already like tapped out. Their elbows, like the mileage on their elbows and their shoulders and their body is already tapped out because they started this stuff at such an early age. And again, like I said, there's so much data that supports it, and it gets to be so competitive, and there's so much money in it. I think this is the thing that kind of bothers me a little bit is moms and dads, they want to do what's best for their kid. Their kid's having fun in the sport. They want to play, and they start playing little league, but then, it's like, well, some of the more elite players, like, let's pull you out and you'd be great on a travel team. And I'm also going to say this, knowing full well that I have lots of very close friends who own and run travel organizations. So this is, again, not anything where I'm attacking anybody, because I also understand everybody needs to make a livelihood. Like, the people who are running these organizations, it's not because they want to, do anything bad. They think they're doing a good job, and many of them are doing a good job. But it does get out of hand when 8-year-olds are getting recruited out of Little League to play on a travel organization, and they're playing Little League and a travel organization or multiple travel organizations, and they're throwing and they're not on pitch counts, or nobody's really paying attention to their elbows and their health. And because they're doing really well, it's like, oh, they threw last night or they threw in a game earlier today, we can throw them in another game in a doubleheader, and they're young, they bounce back great, they don't even need to warm up. And everybody just thinks that these kids, because they're kids and because we can just run, just don't even warm up and go into a game. Everybody thinks these kids are really resilient. And I think kids are resilient, not only physically, but emotionally. But I don't think anybody realizes down the road the impact that it has on them.
Right.
And my my encouragement is to play a different sport every season, to not repeat it. And again, I know that's not a super popular opinion at all. And this is coming from me as a professional in the industry who has a ton of experience in biomechanics and movement. I've got great close relationship with the top orthopedic surgeons in the world and the top strength coaches and athletic trainers, but also coming as a mom and seeing the stress that it puts on a kid. And a kid, the number one reason kids play sports is to have fun. That is,
Yes.
there's tons of data and research and all that kind of shit. And even if you ask a kid, what are you playing for? To have fun. And it really depends on if you've got a coach that is like, yeah, we want to win, we want to win. To the kid, they interpret that. It's like really easy to, I don't want to say this word because it's it can have negative connotations, but like manipulate kids to thinking what you want them to think. Like having fun equals winning.
Right.
Having fun could also mean like backyard pickup baseball with the kids in the neighborhood. And somehow along the way, kids start thinking that winning is what matters. And you see these coaches and parents, and everybody's getting irate on the sidelines and hooting and hollering. And it's just these kids get out on the mound and up to bat, and everyone's yelling at them, swing, swing, throw strikes. No shit, throw strikes. Like you think that kid is sitting there with 100 people in the stands in front of their parents, their friends, their siblings, that they're not trying to throw it down the middle and like trying to, strike the guy out, or
Yes.
they're sitting there not swinging, swing again. Like, so
Yeah.
I'm one of those people on the sidelines that I just kind of have to. I've actually gotten better over the years. The first couple of years, I started to get really frustrated. Like, who the heck do these people think they are? It's a 7-year-old out there. Like, let them go. And you see the coaches battling or yelling at the umps, who the umpires are middle school kids. It's like my friend's kids are the umpire, and it's some random dad in town is yelling at the kid. It's like, what is going on? And so I feel like from just the social well-being of a kid and emotional, all the way obviously to the physical, if we can get it to a place where the kids, again, I'm way more conservative than most, and this isn't wrong if you do something other than what I'm saying here. However, playing one sport a season, a different sport each season. So you play, softball in the spring, basketball in the winter, soccer in the fall, whatever, like football. I don't know what other, I know what other sports they are, but just like varied up. Because when you play another sport, it actually makes you at the sport better at the sport that you like really want to be playing. So if it is baseball or softball, since we're on this podcast here, it is helpful when you are playing something like soccer and basketball in the other seasons, because your body is picking up different types of movement
Yes.
patterns that then strengthen the ones that you need for baseball. And it's going to
Yeah.
help your kids stay healthier too, because they're not putting mileage over and over and over on this arm. You know how many, don't know how many times a kid throws a ball in a season, but it's a lot of freaking times. And if you repeat that season twice, or you're playing on multiple teams, or you're playing year round, by the time you're like too young of an age, your shoulder is just tanked. There is I don't necessarily say that there's a number of, miles or the number of throws that your body has, because it really also depends on how in whack your body is and how well you're maintaining what you do have. But if there's a compensation or something that's slightly out of whack in the body where that it's causing some type of compensation, that compensation, little by little by little by little by little, is wearing on whatever it is that is your body's trying to protect. And then finally, at some point, it's going to go. And I'm seeing now with all these, different elbows getting blown out in the beginning of the season, a lot of them are on younger guys who played year round when they were younger.
Right.
Like I've got one of the guys that is with the Red Sox now. He didn't start pitching until his junior year, I want to say, of college.
Well,
And now he's in the big leagues and he's doing really well. And like the older generation, I would say like 20, 28, and that there's 28 is still young, by the way. It's like still young, but I'm saying like 28, 30 and above. Most of them played all different sports when they were younger. And again,
yep,
the sport specialization didn't start until like later in high school. And even in high school, they played all the sports. It's like, okay, you're a letter athlete, but you only play baseball in the spring because that's when it's offered.
right.
But now we've got baseball and basketball, soccer. They're year round.
Yep.
They're year round, and it's a money making machine. So I think going back to what I was starting to say, and again, I can talk about this for a really long time, and you can see I get a little bit fired up about it, is everybody wants their kid to succeed. You want to see your kid happy, having fun, doing well, winning. Nobody ever, wants to see their kid on the losing team all the time or getting made fun of or, sitting on the bench. Like that just stinks. And what happens is the good kids, the ones who have a little bit more talent, then get recruited out to some travel organization. And then the quality of play is a little bit less in the local kind of home organizations because everyone's going to these travel, which is also tons of money and tons of stress on the family. That's a whole other conversation. And so then it makes the competition not as great in the local stuff. And then everybody thinks, oh, well, you know what? You're on this travel. We should probably do pitching lessons for you. Oh, and you know what? You should probably work on your hitting mechanics. And you know what? While you're at it, we should probably start lifting. And while you're at it, mobility is great too. So suddenly these kids are just like wrapped up into like basically a pro athlete's regimen
Right.
at 8 to 12, 13 years old. And it's, in my opinion, not necessary. Not
Yeah.
necessary. Where I come in with the movement is, yes, there are mechanics that you can tweak, definitely. But part of like the cognitive development of kids, you can tweak their hand positions and their elbow and how they're holding their body a bunch. But if there's something going on out of whack in their body, it's their nervous system that is going to keep them safe and not allow them to pick up that mechanics. So when you can work on getting their body in balance and moving well, the mechanics kind of clean themselves up. And I've seen that time and time and time again with the younger kids. And obviously with the older ones, when they come in, the pro guys are actually less out of whack in their body, like compensations and the positions that their bone structure is in, or like I'm gonna say rib cage and pelvis and different asymmetries. That some asymmetries are good, by the way. But I see they're worse in the younger kids. It's like the younger they get, like pro is a little bit out of whack, but they're really aware of their bodies. And then college, it's like, ooh, wow, okay, what has been going on to get you to here? But then I feel like the high school kids are the most out of whack. And it's the strangest thing to me because I can't figure, okay, they're younger, but I've kind of figured out that, okay, now everybody's on phones and they are playing the same sport, or they're playing video games more than, the generations that are older than them. And they're kind of just getting stuck in the movement patterns of whatever it is that have gotten stuck along the way. So going down to the lowest level with the youth, part of the reason why I'm doing the youth mobility series is if we could get the kids who are already moving well when they're 6 and 7 years old, that they look pretty good. Like their form when they're doing lunges and squats and they're running and they're throwing is really good when you just let them play. If
Yeah.
we could keep that going and not junk it up in that, 9 to 13 and up, once we get that, we're going to keep players, excuse me, a lot healthier and that'll help with their mechanics down the road as well. And obviously affects performance. So yeah, youth sports, I can go on for a while. And I love it. And it's fun watching the kids, but we got to keep them having fun, low stress, and healthy is really
Yeah.
what it's all about.
And I think somewhere along the line, um, we lost perspective, you know. Um, and again, I don't know where it was or how it happened, but you know, again, this like I talk all the time, like every time I took a team on the field, like we were playing to win. However, that wasn't the most important thing, and I did coach a lot of very successful teams. Um, but at the end of the day, it didn't, winning a tournament championship, that trophy didn't mean more than one of our players' health, So we were very cognizant on, pitch counts and um, just being aware of what we were putting our kids through and wanted to build a team environment. And honestly, there we made some decisions that weren't always popular with our parents. Thinking we did pull a kid out of a game too early or something. They mom and dad thought he could throw another 3 or 4 innings or something like that, and we're like, no, like just please let us make those decisions. We have his best interest and the team's best interest at heart.
Yeah.
And, you know, just so many things to unpack in, in what you talked about. And I think the big thing talking about multiple sports is what you mentioned about um, using different muscles in those different sports, which ultimately ends up helping you in the sport that you do consider your primary sport. So like, and I wasn't a great athlete when I was growing up. I was probably slightly above average athlete, but like, you know, baseball was my focus, but I still played, soccer in the fall, basketball in the winter. And I wasn't a great basketball player. I didn't get in the games that much, but throughout the winter, I was still doing basketball stuff at practice every day and stuff like that. So I was still using other parts of my body just by training.
Yeah,
And again, we also have this concept that if you're not you know, why would you go participate in a sport if you're not going to play in the games that often? But like there's still other stuff you get out of that, you know,
definitely.
just from the team aspect and everything else. So um I'm with you when you're talking about just, using those other muscles and how it benefits. Um, but it is so crazy. And again, I get it too. I mean, we were a part of it. We were a nonprofit organization, but we also relied on, we hosted tournaments at our sports complexes, our main, you know, revenue generation for the organization. And the good and bad thing about, hosting baseball and softball tournaments every weekend is like you literally get to see the best and the worst of both worlds, right there in front of your eyes. The good coaches, the bad coaches. Um, and it's sad to see how some of these coaches are, approaching the game, and you wonder what the long-term effects are on those young players. Because again, at the core of it, you still got to be having fun. You still got to be having fun, and it's one thing that one of the biggest blessings I have now traveling around the country is being able to reconnect with some of my old players and sit down and have conversations with them over dinner or have them come over and visit us when we're in a campground or something like that. And um, you know, over my 30 years of coaching, like I definitely at the end of my tenure, you could see how it digressed as far as, how the parents were and stuff like that. And I say a lot of times, I'm not sure that I could coach in today's environment. Certainly not with, my philosophy of team over individual, and life lessons over winning. Um, but, you know, just it's nuts what we've done. And, I just wonder aloud, you know, are we too far gone or can we still salvage youth sports?
A really good question. You know, so I sit on a committee. It's the ABCA, National Youth Baseball Committee. And at ABCA, every year we sit around with representatives from the top organizations, MLB, USA Baseball. I'm going to miss a bunch. So I'm only going to mention Little League. I'm going to only mention a couple because there's a bunch of others really amazing people who sit there, and everyone has the same ideas and perspective of how can we turn this around in a sense, and while benefiting everyone, where it's in the highest and best interest for everyone involved. That's what needs to be done. It's not just, okay, we can't just get rid of travel ball because then there's a ton of families who would lose out on their livelihoods. And then travel ball for some people really works well and it works great for their family. And there's a ton of positives that come out of it for a lot of people. And I'm not saying travel's bad, but I do think there are people with not only within baseball, but within other sports organizations, in basketball, who are trying to do the same thing. Like, just how can we get this back to being fun? How do we speak to players as if they're actual humans and be respectful and kind and build them up and make it a positive thing where, like you had mentioned, team over individual. How can we make this where these lifelong experiences are for the benefit of the kid emotionally and also physically, so that we're not hurting them? We want them to come away with experiences that they remember forever, the core memories that they experience with their friends, and they went through some tough times and they were resilient, because kids, you have to go through hard stuff in order to learn lessons. Boundaries need to
Yes.
be created in order for kids to learn what it is to live within certain limits. It's not just a free for all. It's not an anything goes. It's not everybody, let's all get a trophy. And I say that, let's all get a trophy, not because I don't believe in that. Like, I think it's fun to get a trophy. When we don't get a trophy, that kind of stinks. But it really is about, it shouldn't just be about the winning. And I think one aspect, so I got to remember your question. So I'll come back to this of, is it too far gone? This is kind of a touchy, interesting topic that I think I've brought up on other podcasts, or maybe I've brought it up somewhere else. But okay, how do I bring this up? Um, so a lot of times when you see coaches who are irate and just kind of emotionally decimating a player in front of his teammates and in front of fans, a lot of that, well, we know, has nothing to do with the kid and everything to do with usually the dad. It's pretty rare that a mom is going to do that, just being frank. And dads, in a sense, are so tough on the kids. Sometimes you hear that it's like, well, they're trying to live out like they want their kid to live out their childhood dreams. I think there's a piece of that, but I think a big part of it is like everybody's got trauma and shit from their childhoods in their life. Everybody's got it. I don't care if you grew up with the most charmed childhood. I grew up a pretty charmed childhood, but everybody has stuff that affected them along the way in some way, whether it's you got broken up by someone, or you got embarrassed by a friend in high school, or you didn't, your parents said something to you that at the time you didn't know how to handle it. So you interpreted it the wrong way. And then you go along your whole entire life thinking a particular thing or this particular instance affected you in a certain way that, honestly, I know this is probably like one of these big things that I don't even know how it could happen, but it's kind of like those coaches that are the biggest, I want to swear, big fat jerks. um, like it's like you kind of want to hug them and tell them like everything's going to be okay. Like you might have had a really shitty childhood, or you may be going through really crappy stuff, or you might have some really bad stuff that happened to you in your lifetime. But you're going to be okay, and you're safe, and like you are loved. You may not be liked right now, but you are loved. And I think kind of going from that aspect, and to be honest, I don't have any idea how to even make that possible because it's like on a grand scale. But when we could really support the people who are having the hardest time, from a place of love and tenderness and compassion and holding people accountable for the bullshit that they're pulling. I'm not saying to not do that, but I think that's kind of where we kind of need to start in order to turn around at least the emotional aspect and the mental aspects of the game to be able to support the players. Because when you have the healthier coaches that recognize, okay, you definitely need the life lessons and you need the challenges and know how to overcome those. You need the obstacles, and we need to have this resilience to learn that as a kid, because you need it as an adult. Like if you don't get that as a kid, you're going to have to eventually learn it as an adult, and you're going to perform better as an adult in all aspects of your life when you can learn all of this as a kid. But if you've got a coach who didn't learn all of that and you're taking it all out on the kids, you don't get that from that team environment. So can we turn around youth sports? I think a lot of it has to do with somehow finding ways to support coaches in ways that is from a more supportive standpoint and not from a sanctioned, you're going to get kicked off if you pull this crap again. Not that stuff entirely. Like if things happen over and over, yes, there should be limits and sanctions, but not just cutting off the guy's head because he's not doing well. Figure out what's going on with the guy and how can we support you? What tools can we give you? Okay, all your players are unhappy and fighting all the time. What's going on? If there was some type of resource that we could bring to these players and these coaches, but then also find ways to, okay, travel ball organizations need to make money. They need to put food on their tables to feed their families. So how can we get them to make money where the kids aren't getting taxed out and these parents aren't taking their kids all over creation all year round for thousands and thousands of dollars, and you're robbing families from special time. Like nobody who eats dinner together anymore. I know my family, I've got 4 kids. 3 of them are playing Little League right now. We've got stuff going on. I made sure that there wasn't 2 days a week, there was nothing going on, because you can't do it 7 days a week. You shouldn't even be doing it 5 days a week, honestly. Kids need downtime. There needs to be, whoever's doing the scheduling, recognize that at least give the kids an opportunity to have dinner with their family a couple days a week, or their moms or their dads or their grandparents, whoever they're living with. It's a lot of freaking stress to get your kids out the door. And if they've got all other kids, whether they're older or younger, who have other practices, it trickles down. So I don't think baseball needs to be played 4 and 5 days a week. That is one thing I would say is unanimous with all the mothers that I speak with. Every single mother says, my kid does not need to practice 4 days a week and have games 2 days a week. It's just ridiculous. And then there's the flip side of it is, some of these sports are to get the kids from staying out of trouble. So it's good for them to have that 5 days a week. So there should be options where it's like, okay, let's do like hardcore baseball, hardcore, whatever it is, 3 days a week. And then the other 2 days, you're actually going to be better throwing a football and playing a game in the outfield and playing games and making it more fun. And those are the days that the kids are going to look forward to even more. And they're going to take the serious days more seriously because they have the opportunity to be a kid. They come home from school where they had to sit in a desk all day and listen to somebody else teach them, where I don't know about you, but I mean, thankfully my kids for the most part like school, but they also go to a school where they're not sitting in a desk all day. They're moving, they're outside, they're hands-on. But the majority of kids don't have that. They're stuck in a desk listening to somebody else. They've got stress going on from their own family. Then they've got stuff going on at school, whether it's bullying or teaching, they're learning, whatever. And then they get home, they've got what, maybe an hour. And then they're to baseball practice and everything is structured. And the coaches are like, you listen to me. Let's go. Come on. Let's take this seriously. How are we going to win? Like, when can a kid ever be a kid? If we're able to, so going back to your original question, is it too far gone? I don't think it's too far gone, but it is going to take some like national global shift of a lot of people coming down from the upper levels, implementing certain standards. Okay, listen, you're only allowed to practice X amount of days on the week. And if you do want to put something together, it has to be fun based. You're not going to do drills and skills. It's like, let's play something fun, do some kind of team building, something or another. Go on a freaking hike. I don't know, like just coming up with ideas that you can then maintain that team environment and that social aspect and them having fun. And also, hopefully, it's a little bit less stressful for the coaches that they're not coming up with plans, practice plans for 5 days a week. So then when they do get to the game time, they've just bonded all week. They're going to flow together as a team so much better if they've got that bond in them and it's not competitive within the team and they enjoy each other and then they enjoy that camaraderie in the game. That if you've got the team from that aspect and other people are doing it, I think that I actually do think that is what would help to turn around youth sports. And I also think getting moms involved. So I'm on that committee. I'm one of the mom. I'm like maybe the only mom on there. I know there's two women on it. One of them is with a softball organization, and I don't know if she has kids. But I'm kind of on there as the movement expert and work with pros, but also as the mama bear. And like once you get a bunch of mama bears to realize, hey, if you do this a bunch, your kids are gonna get hurt. If you do this, like your kid may not, like the percentage of your kids actually going to get a college scholarship for baseball is like slim to none. Hate to cut it to you, but like
Yes.
it's like not really that much. Like you want to get recruited to play baseball. Great, I get that. But if you want a scholarship, it's like it's not as little. The percentage isn't as low as how many people are going to make it to the big leagues or play pro baseball, but it's pretty low. So what else can you do to get your kid a college scholarship? Get them out in the community, good grades, on different committees at school, things like that. And when the moms, I feel like when the moms know, hey, what you're doing could get your kid hurt. What you're doing is actually not in the best interest of the kids. Moms are like, huh, my intuition was kind of telling me that, but all these dads and all these coaches are telling me to sign my kid up for pitching lessons, hitting lessons, should sign up for travel ball because you're going to be left out. Oh, if you're left out, your kid's probably not going to make this particular team. And oh, he's probably going to sit the bench and your kid's probably going to get bullied because, he's a nobody because he's not playing or she. And I feel like it eats at parents when inside they realize, is this actually good for my kid? And I feel like when I say stuff like this and I talk to other parents, they they every single time, like I was wondering if this was actually good for my kid, but I didn't want to be the one parent who said no and my kid is left out and my kid loses and my kid feels like the odd man out or my kid isn't doing as well as everybody else. Guaranteed the kids who, and I'm not going to say guarantee, but the kids who are doing all the pitching lessons, the hitting lessons, and all that stuff now, they might be fantastic right now, but when they hit puberty, they may absolutely lose all their stuff and not know how to control their body. And they may end up being the worst kid on the team. And you don't know that. But if you support their kid from a holistic standpoint, again, physically, but also that socially and emotionally, that mental aspect, that's what makes the kids succeed. That's where everybody wins. That's where it's more fun. And so I don't think we're too far gone, but I do think like there needs to be a shift of some big giant organization who just one year says, this is how we're going to do it. And they might get backlash on it from all the old school mentality coaching, but little by little by little, we can eventually make the change. And I do think it's possible. And I'm here for that.
Good. It makes me happy because I sometimes wonder for sure, but I agree with you. It's got to come, honestly, almost from, you know, Major League Baseball or, USA baseball, or even, I'm glad to hear that the ABCA is, kind of hoping to lead that charge in a way as well. Because I do agree it's got to come from the top, and it's not going to be embraced. Um, there's going to be a lot of people who buck that. Um, but I do think it's something that needs to be done because you know, what we're doing to some of these kids is just really outrageous. Um,
I feel
so
like we're robbing so many kids of their childhood. So many people might say, well, their childhood, they had such great experiences traveling around to all these tournaments and all that kind of stuff. But and that's absolutely accurate that the kids would have fun. But when you think back, what is childhood really supposed to be about, right? Is it about all this regimented traveling and training and that? No, like you get that when you're older. When you're in high school, you got to do that. When you're in college, when you got to do that. If you play or just in real life, that's what happens when you grow up. Like let kids be kids. Let kids be kids. Let them run free, play, climb trees, climb on monkey bars. Let them, and I know like trees and monkey bars, like not everybody either has that or wants that, but just as an example, just let kids be kids. Let them have those pickup games. Let them play pickup basketball. Find some place if one parent around wants to organize and just be present. So then there's adult supervision. It's pretty easy to get permission from the Recs department or the town hall. Say, hey, is there a field available that we can just have kids play there? If it's not in a neighborhood where anybody has access to that, it's possible. It just takes one parent to say, hey, I can handle this. And you'd be surprised at how many parents are for that.
Yeah. And I think some of it comes from the just this weird societal thing that we have of just keeping up with the Joneses when you talk about, you're afraid that, maybe your kid's going to be left out if you're not on the travel ball team or something like that. And it's also very much it's very much an Anglo-Saxon problem as well, because, one of the things at our organization later, toward the end of my tenure, we started getting a lot of inner city Latin kids in our program. And um, those kids had fun, like really had fun. And they could, um, you know, we ran a complex, and over the summer, it was not uncommon for us to see 5 or 6 of these kids roll up to our complex and just ask if they could use a field, you know, that was sitting there empty to just play, and we were like, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember, having pickup baseball games when I was a kid. You know, you talk to kids nowadays, and there's no such thing as a pickup baseball game or a pickup football game or a pickup basketball game anymore. We've gotten so used to all of this structure, and we need to just, you know, have fun and be ourselves every once in a while. I mean, before we were recording, I told you about what kind of launched me on this journey was taking a trip that for the first time in my lifetime was not regimented and spelled out and had every single move of every single minute, laid out for me, which I laid out, but still, you still had to abide by it, whether you were the person that created the schedule or just had to follow it. And you find out that freedom of, being able to just go and do it. So, um, yeah, I hope that it definitely changes. Just schedule some play days for kids, man. Just let them go out there and make their own rules and not have umpires and referees and coaches and, all that sort of stuff there to guide it. Like just make your own rules, call your own fouls, call your own
Have
balls and
ghost runners on
strikes. Yeah.
second,
Yes.
you know?
If we didn't have enough
Let the parents
players,
play.
yeah, if we didn't have enough players, we closed right field or something. You couldn't hit
Yeah.
if you hit the ball to right, it was an out or something like that, or whatever the case was. So
There's so much value in allowing the kids to lead that because then they're problem solving and they're trying to figure out, okay, how can we make this work? And they're working together as a team. You might get kids who are considered rivals, but when you put them all together and there's not adults that are telling them you have to do this, you don't have to, you have to do this. They figure out a way to make it work and it's fun and they have fun and they're learning. And again, yeah, there's so much value in unstructured play.
yeah, I love it. I love it. Going to shift gears a little bit here and talk about your professional experience. Um, Although I could talk for another hour just about the youth component, but we don't want to go too far here. So, how did you get involved in working with pro teams, and how was that, you know, kind of breaking into the boys club as a female?
Interesting question. Thank you. So, kind of always, honestly, I get along well with guys. I actually think I was probably, I don't know if you believe in former lives, but I always joke like I was probably a former guy and or a guy in a former life. Um, so you could just delete that part, right? If you're just going to edit that out, you'll leave it in. Now, if it's still left in, well, I was trying to get it edited out. But anyway, so to answer your question, um, so I've always been in, wellness and fitness and sports and training and all that kind of stuff. And then as I was married to a minor league baseball player and started doing yoga with the Royals back in the day. And guys would show up and guys would hear that I was doing yoga. So then the Royals actually invited me in. So do it during spring training. I had to get there, the crack of dawn when it's freezing in Arizona. And they would just send players. And there was a guy there with his clipboard. And it's like, okay, I want this guy to go and this guy to go. And it was just really fun because it was all, teammates of my former husband. And it was just like friends. I get to play with people and do this stuff. And they got a lot of benefit out of it. So I did that I don't know, like 15 years ago, something like that. And then out of baseball, had 4 kids. And then really kind of when COVID hit, I was just starting to think, okay, I've got all these kids. I was pretty honestly miserable in my life at the time, super happy with my kids, but was so far gone from who I really was that I thought, okay, I need to get back to doing some of the things that I enjoy. So I just started taking classes and some certifications and studying for different things, just really genuinely for me. Well, then I thought, well, maybe I'll do yoga again with the players. That, that was cool. And this was back in 2019 or 2020, something like that. And along the way, I've, kept up with all of the things that I did, but I hadn't worked in 15 years is really what it comes down to when you start doing the math. And then, so when COVID hit, I just started offering a free yoga class to whoever wanted to come during COVID because they shut down spring training. So I thought, okay, everybody's home. Nobody can go to the gym. Everybody's sitting there like, for the end of spring training, we're going to lose but what we got. So on Facebook, I went and I just said free yoga class every single day while spring training is on hiatus. And some days I'd have nobody show up, which is really humbling. And then other days I'd have a dozen people. And it was players from a bunch of different teams. I think I had a couple New Orleans Saints cheerleaders who also came. And I had families come. I had parents and mothers of pro players who joined. And I just did that just to kind of give back to everybody. And for me, I did it for me, just for like a good headspace. Okay, this is, me getting back to me. And once everybody went back to spring training, I thought, okay, that was kind of fun. So then I think I was trying to build into, I don't even know actually what was happening there, but it's really impossible to get into pro sports, like impossible. And I know there's probably people who think, well, she was a baseball wife. That's an easy in. It's actually the opposite. If you are the spouse of a pro player, at least in baseball, it's even harder because they think we're not like, oh, everybody thinks they're great. And just because you're a player, you get special treatment. It's like the complete opposite. Like doors, no thanks, no thanks. And everybody's very polite. Oh, thanks for reaching out. But we're good with that. So I busted my butt. I reached out to pretty much every single person that I have known, cold called everybody. I got thousands of no's, no thank yous, or zero responses. And my little voice just said, just keep going, just keep going. Like, all right, I'm going to keep going, even though this is actually embarrassing if I like tell anybody what's going on. It may look like on social media that things are going well, but literally zero people are saying yes. So then I ended up putting this mobility series together. And I had finished a particular yoga training that's based in physical therapy. And it's actually the basis of what I do, a lot of what I do right now. And at the end of the course, it said something like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Or put some goals together. And as I was putting it together, the thought came to my head, put together a 12-week mobility series. And I thought, for what? Like, what am I going to do? Like, I don't even know. And again, my little voice just said, just keep going. So I just started writing things and planning and putting some graphics together. And then I didn't even have the program together, but I put it out on social media, like, I'm going to do this mobility series. And it's for pro guys only because that was my market at the time. And
Hmm.
as a former baseball wife, I also run a couple of the secret Facebook or the secret groups for baseball wives and minor league baseball wives. And I thought, okay, well, I'll put it out there. I'm still friends with baseball wives. I put it up for registration and I just pray, like, I hope one person signs up. I hope one person I will give it away for people to do it. And I basically did just give it away. And I got a decent, I mean, for me, more than one is a decent amount of people. And so I started doing the program and it was going to be live on Zoom. So like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, there was going to be a class and I'm going to teach this. Well, then I started recording the classes because if there were guys who couldn't come to the time that I was scheduling the Zoom, they needed to see the video. So I recorded all of them. And then at the end of it, I kind of just sat to figure out, okay, what's going to happen next? Well, then I watched all these guys go do their season, and there are a bunch of guys that made their big league debuts, that were throwing harder, that were lifting harder, that at the end of the season, we took their stats and ran them, did some statistical analysis, and something like, I wish I had the stats in front of me, but everybody's home run rate increased. It's like 100% of the players who were hitters, their home run rate increased. And of those, it increased by 80%. Their
Wow.
ERA dropped, I think it was like by 0.59. Their K per nine rate lowered, I don't know, like 8%. I actually don't know what that number is. Don't quote me on that. Most of the guys were throwing 2 to 5 miles per harder than they've ever thrown in their lives. Guys were lifting more than they've ever thrown in their lives. And the amount of injuries was so significantly lower than the overall average that was just like, oh, maybe I'm onto something. I mean, I spent a lot of time doing this series too. It was like hundreds and hundreds of hours of building that. And that's kind of, and I just busted my butt talking to tons of people. Again, getting no's at every single turn. But then the players who did well and made their big league debuts, then the next year they came back. And now I just ran my 4th mobility series, and it's still a mini little thing. But I've had coaches, like I said, coaches and players from 27 to 30 teams. I've now spoken at a bunch of different conventions. I was absolutely honored to speak on the youth stage at ABCA this year, which this is kind of a funny little story, kind of breaking into baseball. I didn't even know what ABCA was up until a couple of years ago. And I heard about the convention in Chicago like 2 or 3 days before the convention. I thought, I should probably go to that convention. I literally threw my laptop in the car. Shouldn't admit this, but I was updating my website driving out to Chicago during a snowstorm, first week of January. I knew no one. There was a coach that from California that connected me with somebody who thought they were going, who then wasn't going. So they connected me with Alan Jegger, who was supposed to also be going. So Alan Jegger, the guy, J-Bands, the creator of J-Bands, who's the most amazing human being on the planet and such an awesome mentor. He was going to be there. So I thought, okay, there's somebody I like kind of know. Day before, he says, I'm not going, because it was all during COVID. And then he had some stuff going on. So he didn't go. So now I know nobody. And it's in a place where there's 5 to 10,000 dudes and me, and nobody knows who I am or what I do. I basically hid in my hotel room, and I had business cards printed and shipped overnight to my hotel. And there was one day I was so intimidated. It was like as outgoing as I seem. If in these situations, I was just mortified to go talk to anybody. But my intuition said, Tracy, whatever you do, just hand out as many business cards as you can. That's all. That's your only goal here, which is so opposite me. I am not a salesperson. I'm not that kind of person. I could talk to anybody, but that's not me. I went out that day, and I went out and I said, what's up? My name is like, I'm MobilityChick. On the back of this car, I've worked with players and coaches from 27 to 30 teams. I think it was like 22 at the time, 22 to 30 MLB teams. On the back of this card, there's a 30-minute free pregame warm-up that my pro guys do. And I had it buttoned up a little bit better. Then I just hand the card. It was like, boom. Like I saw there was a line at the guy's bathroom, and my voice said, go talk to them. Like, oh, Jesus. Like, I'm like, what's up? My name is Laura. Handed it out, just sweating, like mouth dry. And I did it. And I made the goal myself. You know what? I'm going to speak here. I'm going to speak here. Even though nobody knows who I am, that's my goal. And from there, I got a couple other, I think from there, somebody reached out to me to do a podcast and then invited me to speak at the VBCA right after that. And shortly later that year, I got invited to be on the ABCA podcast with Ryan Brownlee, which is actually an awesome podcast, one of my favorite ones. And then at the end of the podcast, he invited me to be on the hot stove the following year, which was last year. In 2 years in advance, he invited me to speak this past year, so in January. And it's kind of just been this journey of constantly building and growing and networking. And now I've got coaches, so many strength coaches within a bunch of different organizations who will call me and say, I've got this guy. This is what he's doing, blah, 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 blah. What do you think? I'm like, okay, what about this? What about this? What about this? And we just shoot some ideas back and forth, and he tries them, and we go back and forth, and it works out. So breaking into the baseball was definitely not easy. Lots of closed doors, shut doors, no's, over and over and over. but I was dedicated to just keep going and just despite the no's, I feel like there's something else that's motivating me and pushing me to do all of it because there's this something for the greater good overall that I'm supposed to be a part of. I don't know what it is yet because I'm still on that journey, but it's just funny that most people start out with the younger and then break into pro. And mine was the opposite. Mine was pro and now like slowly trickling down, which I'm incredibly grateful for. And I'm incredibly grateful for all of the people who have kind of taken me under their wing and mentored me and put, shout outs on social media or mentioned me or connected me in different ways. Without those connections and without all of that support, I wouldn't be on this podcast right now because I wouldn't have posted anything at that point. So yeah, just keep going. And despite all the closed doors and all the no's, if there's something that you've got an idea for that you feel like is like a higher purpose, my little voice was just keep going. And now here I am, and I'm going to be publishing a book soon. So yeah, little by little by little, a lot of hard
Cool.
work.
I love it. I think that's a great story, even outside of sports, is to just, you know, everybody thinks once they see someone who's successful that like there was this magic pill they took and all of a sudden they were successful.
Oh no.
Like I saw a poster one time where it showed an iceberg, and it had success at the top of
Yeah.
the iceberg, and then underneath it, it showed sleepless nights and, rejection and failure and all of this stuff that you don't see underneath the success. And I think just yours is a story of resilience and determination to just, keep pushing regardless. So, anybody that's out there listening, again, whether they're in the sports world or just the business world, that story alone is worth its weight in gold. So I love the fact that you told it and that you kept going, after all those no's. So it's a great story for sure. So Tracy, we've been all over the place. Is there anything that you think we missed that would be important to the listeners before we start to wrap things up?
We were all over the place. I like all over where we've been. I actually think we covered a lot of really good, positive stuff, good messages, not only from the movement aspect, but youth and then pro, the mental aspect, how to stay healthy. And I think I would just add that um, at least from the younger ages, just kind of taking some of the stress off the kids, allowing them to be kids. And from the movement standpoint, help them start to move well sooner. And I've got a ton of free resources. Maybe I'll share that now on my website and social media. I'm mobilitychick.com. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram, also MobilityChick, CHICK. I've got a free pregame warm up. I've got a youth mobility series that's coming up, or it's called a movement optimization program, MOP. I think that's what it's going to be called. It's like a youth MOP that will help everybody from all ages, youth to pro, in a really simple terms, learn how to move their body in the right way. And actually, I will add this. It's not out yet, so I'm not necessarily plugging it, but what I've seen is a lot of what's missing in the youth world is that holistic approach. It's not just strength training. It's not just, these stretching moves. It's not just these mobility stuff. It's everything. So I actually have in there some vision stuff. There's also myofunctional training. So there's stuff with your tongue. Your tongue is related. Mouth breathing has a detriment to kids and their sports performance and, mental and stress. I feel like there's a couple other things. Tapping I've got in there. So tapping and helping to bring the, mind, body, everything's connected. I think it's not just one thing. It's not just, get the mechanics great. It's not just get the mind great, not just get the body in sync. It's all related and there's so many levels and it's not that complicated to bring them all together to support our kids, to allow them to be the best versions of themselves while having fun. So I think that's the only other thing I would have added.
I love that. And it's so important to understand that it's a very intricate component. And if one of those things, whether, I've had some, um, mental coaches on the show in the past and stuff like that. And, that's something that people forget about as well. It's like they want to invest all the money in the pitching lessons and the hitting lessons and all that sort of stuff. But then they forget about the mental side and, how you got to deal with that as well. So it's all one big package. It's throwing, it's hitting, it's mobility, it's mental. So I love the fact that you're doing that. Um, and both individuals and teams can reach out to you for what you're doing, correct?
Correct. Facilities. I have a lot of facilities. I do clinics. Actually, that comes up kind of in the spring and the summer. So I travel around the country and put on 2 to 3 hour movement clinics and just kind of help get the foundations and the fundamentals. And it's really fun because then you're able to implement it into particular drills. So I work with the coaches of the facilities and we take their drills that they like and the kids are used to, and we take my cues and system and put it in, and we can work on it together. So if you're interested in doing a clinic throughout the summer, my availability is starting to book up now. So that's another way you can reach out. I actually really enjoy those too, because I love being in person with people.
Yeah, clinics are always a lot of fun. Always a lot of fun. So, Tracy, as you know, this brings us to our final question. That, as you know, the subtitle of the podcast is "Many Little People in Many Little Places," which comes from the opening lyrics of a Michael Franti song, "Gloria," which go, "When many little people in many little places do many little things, and the whole world changes." So, it's one of the little things that Tracy does on a regular basis, on a daily basis, to make the world a little bit better place.
I'm glad you prepped me with this before we started recording because I would have kind of paused, but now it's very evident to me. And what it is being the most authentic version of yourself and not allowing anyone ever to steer you off of that path. Because when we are our most authentic selves, acting from a place of truth, authenticity, and integrity, that is what allows us and our light to shine and radiate and uplift others. When we are not in that place of authenticity and integrity, truth and love, people can pick up on it, and it brings others down. So when you are in that speaking truth, speaking again, I say this, with a place of integrity, everything kind of starts to build and grow in a really positive way. So that would be mine, is just be the most authentic version of yourself. Everybody's weird. Everybody's got weird shit, like everybody's quirky in their own ways. But so many, especially for kids and adults, I feel like adults, have been told to not be themselves, to be like everybody else from a young age. When you get to be your adult, and I think this is a part of like why a lot of coaches are like the way they are, and the not the good ones, is because they've been told to not be themselves for so long. They're so far away from it and they are so unhappy where they are. So as adults, if we can just little by little by little start to let our quirks out, our little like weird things out, right? Those weird things make us who we are. We are all so unique, and those little everybody has an anomaly about them, whatever it is, right? When and it's different. Nobody else has exactly what you are, but everybody's so afraid to be different than somebody else that they think it's wrong, and they aren't that. But you're actually starving yourself and everybody around you from being the best versions of yourself when you're not your most authentic self. So every single day, I do my best to really just hone in on, okay, what can I do from a place of love and light and joy and integrity and honesty, even if it doesn't feel like you want to do it. When you do that, that is what helps me be the best version of myself and encourage others around me to be the best version of themselves as well.
Love it. That's a great answer. Tracy, I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the show. I know you got a crazy schedule right now, so to carve out some time and have a chat, very appreciated. For those out there listening, be sure to check out my other podcasts and blogs at journeymymotherson.com. While you're there, pick up a copy of one of my books. And again, Tracy, I really appreciate this conversation. We could have gone on and on for sure.
For sure. Dan, thank you so much for having me. And I can't wait to listen to this. This is a good one. I'm excited about this one. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You bet.